If you are my enemy, I would advise that you buy a new Nvidia graphics card. For some reason, the current generation of hardware in the gaming industry is not capable of running new games. However, remember the previous generations? This is what AAA games used to look like, and these were its system requirements. You needed just 1 damn gigabyte of video memory to actually look at these incredible graphics. And to play Red Dead Redemption 2 on maximum settings, you only needed 4 gigabytes. Now, the same graphics card that pulled off RDR2's ultra graphics is the minimum you need to just run Marvel Rivals. Are you serious? But what happened? Why is it that with each generation of hardware we don't get the promised performance jump, but rather lose frames, stability, and picture quality? The answer is simple and yet sad at the same time. Planned obsolescence. Ever since the days of the 1000th series, Nvidia has made its conclusions. Affordable and powerful graphic cards are not their business. So, now every new GPU series becomes garbage literally on the day of its release. Except, of course, the flagship model. In other words, Nvidia deliberately releases cards that only look better on paper than the previous generation, but in practice, these improvements are either imperceptible or ridiculous. This is done on purpose so that customers are forced to upgrade the more and more expensive models every single year, because cheap solutions are no longer able to cope with even the basic tasks of modern games. Take a look at the RTX 5070 Ti, a card that is supposed to be the golden mean for gamers who don't want to spend extra money but want to play games comfortably. Its price is about $750, although 2 generations ago, the same model cost a couple $100 less. And what do you get for this extra money? The gap from the previous 4070 Ti is a miserable 10 to 15%. And in most new games, even less. Moreover, the older flagship RTX 4090, although expensive, literally wipes out the 5070 Ti with a 40% difference. And this really looks like a deliberate limitation by Nvidia. In addition, hope for previous generations is also disappearing. You can no longer buy a 4070 Ti or even a 3070 for normal money because they are simply not on the market. Nvidia is not interested in selling old models that can compete with new and expensive ones. So, while hardware is becoming less and less profitable to upgrade, maybe it's time to invest into something more stable, like yourself. And I don't know a place where you can do it better than here. It's boot.dev, an online platform where you can actually learn backend development. Boot.dev is like an RPG where you farm backend skins in Python, Golang, or SQL. And most importantly, it's not actually boring. They actually made courses where you write code like in a game, with levels, XP, quests, and even bosses. It's perfect if you've ever dreamed of becoming a programmer, but couldn't stand the boring explanations in other courses. Here you will find short lessons, practical tasks, and even your own AI mentor in the form of a magic bear that can tell you something right away. I actually did try it myself, and honestly, this is the first online course that I really liked and actually learned something from. Check it out for yourself. Go to boot.dev using the link in the description, take a free demo, and if you do, use my code RadicalCap for a 25% discount for a year. And who knows, maybe in a couple years I'll be recording a video titled How Good Modern Games Look because of you. As I said, today this green company, like the Grinch who wants to steal your money, deliberately limits the possibilities of the middle segment, forcing customers to upgrade regularly or pay a lot of money for flagship models. But it does it in a very cunning way. Let's take the 8GB RTX 5060 Ti for example. Recently, a guy from Hardware Unboxed channel tested this video card and showed how useless it is. Without an upgrade, even games that were released a couple of years ago don't deliver stable 60 FPS. And some even 30. And a logical question arises to why Nvidia is releasing a video card with only 8GB of video memory in 2025, if this is definitely not enough for modern developers to optimize their games in any way. And I think there are 3 specific reasons why they released the 8GB version. First, non-technical buyers might buy it by mistake. Secondly, the existence of an 8GB video card will make the 16GB version seem much better than it actually is. And thirdly, customers who can buy the 8GB version will eventually be forced to upgrade in just a couple of years to buy the 10GB version of the RTX 7060 Ti, which will also be too small. Nvidia proves once again that it is the king of anti-consumer strategies. And unfortunately, they managed to realize their greedy and disgusting plan. Their plan was to completely destroy the mid-range segment of video cards. Given that, they destroyed the budget segment a long time ago. Nvidia, just like other hardware manufacturers, is now forbidden to be poor. And the best illustration of this is the 8 gigabytes in 2025. Are you fucking serious? No, I'm not saying it's not enough. Once upon a time, it would have been enough to run Witcher 3 in 4K on 2 monitors at once. But we know how modern developers optimize their games, and we see that 8 gigabytes of video memory is no longer enough for them. In tests without an upgrade, this card can't even run old games at 60 FPS. In Cyberpunk 2077, the average settings are only 43 FPS. And now we can't say that the game has terrible optimization, as CDPR has long since fixed everything here. In addition, in the recent port of The Last of Us 2 on PC, this new generation video card also gives us constant drops of up to 30 FPS. And in Remnant 2, the game runs steadily below 50 FPS until you turn on DLSS in performance mode. And so it is with almost all games. These are not isolated cases. Nvidia knew perfectly well that 8 gigabytes of memory in 2025 is absolutely ridiculous. And that's why they released a 16 gigabyte version to create a false impression of progress. Like, this one is the real one, and the smaller one is for state employees. But the state employees were simply abandoned because there are no games with 8 gigabytes of storage left in 2025. At first, you are lured by the price of $399 for the 5060 Ti 8 gigabytes. You are happy to upgrade, and a year later, new games do not run without an update. Shadows flicker, and the picture adjusts every time you switch from the cutscene to the gameplay. And this game works perfectly, because each new release is not a breakthrough, but a thoughtful wear and tear of the market, where instead of durability, you are sold repeated disappointment. In this case, you might think, okay, the 5060 Ti is a failure, but I'm not an idiot. I'll get something more powerful. For example, RTX 5080. It's expensive, but at least it's stable. But the problem is that even this is a trap. The RTX 5080 costs $1,100 officially, but you won't find it cheaper than $1,700 to $1,900 on the market, and almost $2,000 from resellers. And you know what you get for this type of money? A 15 to 20% increase over RTX 4080 at its best. In Cyberpunk 2077, it's a 17% increase. In Remnant 2, plus 14%. Alan Wake 2 has even less. And in Monster Hunter Wilds, this video card can't even deliver stable 60 FPS. How can this game run so terribly if the action takes place in the damn desert? And then you're like, okay, well then I'll buy an RTX 4080. It's the previous generation. It should be cheaper, but it wasn't to be. The RTX 4080 is only $100 to $150 cheaper now because it was simply removed from the shelves. Supplies were limited and production stopped. Nvidia is not just moving forward, it is burning bridges so that you cannot turn back. They have realized that with each generation, their hardware is becoming more and more unprofitable for ordinary people. So they simply do everything to make the previous one impossible to buy. Just remove all of the alternatives and leave you with only the new and completely disproportionate price to performance ratio. Nvidia doesn't want you to buy a card that will last for 4 years. They want you to buy the same thing every 18 months, but at a higher price. Fuck my dick. Previously, the middle class was somehow catching up to the flagships, and now the 4090 simply destroys the 5070 Ti. And even according to their own figures, the increase is 35% maximum. And this is with multi-frame generation. Without it, it's even less. Today, there is no middle segment, and you have to pay $1,800 for 12% plus FPS, because you are simply not left with any more options. Right now, every gamer who has bought a new generation of graphics cards is looking at their new RTX 50 series and laggy gameplay on medium settings and asking themselves a logical question. Maybe it's not the hardware. Maybe it's just the games that stopped working properly. In 2025, we are faced with a strange paradox. Video cards are becoming more powerful with 8 to 10 times more memory than 10 years ago. But performance is not only not growing, but actually degrading. And the reason is clearly not just hardware. Although it is unreasonably expensive, it is still quite powerful. The real reason is a change in the philosophy of gaming software development. First, the industry has finally lost the emphasis on individual optimization. In the 2000s, games were created for very limited resources, 1 or 2 gigabytes of VRAM, a weak processor, a narrow memory channel. Every shader, every polygon, every megabyte was critical. Optimization was an integral part of development. Today, projects are created on engines like Unreal Engine 5, which are powerful but resource intensive. Their global lighting, content streaming, and virtual geometry systems are designed for flagship hardware. As a result, what looks good on a top-of-the-line configuration simply doesn't work stably on the average level, which is the majority of today's hardware. The second problem is the shift in the business model. Studios used to spend years optimizing for release. Now, the main thing is to get it out on time for a quarterly report or a big presentation. The third factor is the inefficient use of video memory. Even with 16 to 24 gigabytes of VRAM, many games are unable to use it adequately. The reasons for this are poor texture caching, aggressive streaming, and improper resource pipeline construction. And if it sounds fucking complicated, then, in short, developers are just lazy. Or not. I don't know. In other words, a large amount of memory ceases to be an advantage if the game is not able to use it correctly. Upscaling is another problem. DLSS, FSR, XESS, LGBTQ. But today, they have become a replacement for native performance. From the very beginning, the game is designed in such a way that it works properly only with active upscaling. At native resolution, it freezes because it is no longer a priority. And finally, cross-platform compatibility. Most studios focus on a single target platform, a console with a fixed hardware configuration. The PC version receives only a basic adaptation. At best, it has advanced settings. At worst, a bad port. The idea of making a game that works stably on a wide range of hardware simply does not fit into modern budgets and deadlines. But even on consoles, things are not so good now. For the last few years, I've been a little confused. It seems like we have incredible hardware at our fingertips. Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5 Pro, all this powerful hardware. And yet, it seems that performance in modern console games has become noticeably worse. It turns out that the new games are running at a blurrier resolution than even the final generation PS4 and PS4 Pro, which was much weaker than the PS5. Yes, we got some nice things, like faster loading and finally getting rid of loading screens. Well, almost. But overall, it seems like we've really slipped in terms of performance. Over the last decade, we seem to have made a big leap in technology from 1280p to 4K. But at the same time, we have hardware that deliver resolutions that would have been unacceptable back in 2013. I think there are several problems here. First, neural networks and other AI algorithms for upscaling, like PSSR on PS5 or USSR on Xbox. These could be cool things, but they just make the picture worse. Many studios decided, we can't pull 4K consistently, but we can make a game in 1080p and just pull it all up to 4K with the help of AI. And now it has become a common practice to render a game at a low resolution. We are already in the 5th year of this generation. Most of it has already passed, and the performance is such that it would have been unacceptable 10 years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if the original version of a game that was released on PlayStation 4 had a better resolution than its remake today. We just find ourselves in a time where hardware is growing faster than people know how to work with it. Optimization has disappeared because it has been replaced by upscaling. And on top of that, Nvidia is deliberately limiting the mid-range segment, setting crazy prices and creating the appearance of progress. And you know what? The worst part isn't even that they charge you more. It's the more you pay, the less you actually get. All right, let's wrap it up. See you guys. Good luck.